What is going on, everybody? I'm Mike Bunt, and I am joined alongside Jake Micah for another episode of Pay the Bills. We are 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, which means it's go time. It's time to start talking about the prospects, which direction you think the Bills should go. There's a lot of discussion, whether it be defensive line, cornerback, safety, maybe wide receiver. Jake, welcome onto the show. How are you feeling tonight?
Mike, I'm excited, man. It's been an interesting draft process, and I feel like the Bills have kept everything close to the vest, which is why I wanted to have this conversation tonight because we didn't get to talk about the draft a lot last night. If you didn't listen to last week's show, it was a blast. We got into it. It was a true Tuesday night debate there, but I really don't know the vibes. Like I kind of have an idea of where everybody's at, but I'm interested to hear where you're at and how you're feeling about the Bills draft heading into it. Man, 2 weeks from tonight. Like it's sneaking up on us here. 3 weeks.
Yeah, a little bit
3 weeks?
earlier
Is it
than
2 weeks? 3 weeks? Am I right?
I believe 2 weeks from
Yeah.
tonight, the 24th. So almost here. And we apologize a little bit for our technical issues today. Jake's camera's not working as normal, so he's off a cell phone. But Jake, let's get right into it. As far as positional needs, do you have a spot for the Bills that is your number one priority going into this draft?
It still remains, and I know we need a cornerback too. And I'm going to pop out of here and come back in a second, Mike. D tackle remains the biggest thing for me because if I'm looking at it, really, if I'm looking at how I build a team, I just build in the trenches, and they still have a hole there in that roster. Maybe not immediate, maybe not right this second where they couldn't survive this year, but in the future, I still feel like they're going to need to address that position seriously.
Now, obviously, Jake's going to be back in just a moment here. There's a lot of good D tackles in this draft. A lot of talk recently about how this draft, there might not be a ton of high upside players, but there's a lot of starters in this draft overall. Just looking at D tackle, a lot of names that people have been bringing up: Kenneth Grant, there's Darius Alexander, Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. Jake, is there anyone specifically that has caught your eye among the D tackles?
Oh my gosh, I've never seen whatever just happened with my camera. I've never seen happen until right now. So sorry about that, folks. D tackle wise, Kenneth Grant is my number one target still because I've been clamoring for the biggest human possible. I think our friend at Cover One, Greg Thompson, says it very well. Get big humans. I fully agree with that. He's 350. He plays exactly the role they need next to Ed Oliver. He was very effective next to Mason Graham this year. I know Mason Graham is obviously a guy that has been almost written in pen to the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 5 at this point and is a top 5 talent. So maybe he helped Grant along, but maybe Grant helped him along too. Maybe who knows how that relationship, how truly symbiotic it was and who benefited more from the other. You can't tell that how that's going to impact on the fit on the Bills team too, and what it would look like for a guy. You saw how good Graham is, top 5 potential pick. If Grant, it's confusing me when I'm saying this. So if Grant is a guy that you put next to Oliver, maybe it truly unlocks Oliver to get back to the peak that we know he can get to too. So I still feel like addressing that D line and putting a guy like Grant, he's kind of like the perfect guy in that perfect spot. I love Harmon. They'd probably have to go up to get him. He's not. He's more agile, and I think he's a different kind of player. But I still think there's a possibility that we, as a fan base, and the people thinking about the draft, and the people, the content creators, and everything else, are thinking a lot. We're thinking a lot about positional fit, and we should. I think when it comes to D line though this year, I think they should just go get dogs, go get talent. Like don't think you can't. In my mind, I don't want to try to find the perfect puzzle piece for the defensive line. I just want a guy that you can go after and get the quarterback and figure out how to work him in no matter what. Whether it's one tech, three tech, it doesn't matter to me. Is the guy going to be able to put his hand in the ground and get after the quarterback or make a big impact in the run game and what you need and make splash plays? They need a guy that can go out and do that. So I think they need to take a chance on a guy that might not fit positionally or schematically like we've thought about in the Buffalo Bills past, but has a higher upside and a higher chance to be a star. Because that's Mike, that's what we've been talking about, right? Like we need that blue chip ratio up. We need more stars. Picking late in the 30s is hard. It's hard to find those stars. So unless they're going to trade up big, I think you got to take a D tackle, a D lineman with some real high upside. I think that's why a Landon Jackson guy keeps getting mentioned. Like, and that's an edge, but he feels like a guy with a lot. It's like the potential through the roof with a low floor. I feel like the Bills are exploring that a little bit more right now.
Are you in the camp of defensive lineman or bust in the first round, or do you care if it's at pick 30 or one of the picks in the second round?
I don't even mind if they trade back into the second round. I think they can move around the board. I'm not defensive line or bust with the first pick though. And so that brings it to my question for you is with the cornerback position. Do you feel that's more of do you think that that's where they would go? Do you think that they're going to look at it as this is the biggest hole on our team? We have to figure that out.
I think corner is the number one target right now. And it's funny because when we went into the offseason, my thought was defensive tackle, defensive end. Obviously, we were all in on Myles Garrett and Max Crosby and all those rumors and speculation. Both players extended with their teams. You get Joey Bosa, that really kind of takes care of the edge situation for now. You already have Greg Rousseau. You have some depth behind them. I think right now, D tackle still stands out as a problem, but there's so much depth in this draft at that position. I don't think you have to reach for it at pick number 30. So I think cornerback does become the number one priority unless there is somebody at another position that is just so good that has fallen to you in your lap that you can't say no to that person. But I think right now, corner seems to be my top thought going into the draft. Two guys that really stand out to me, realistic options, I would say would be Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky, and then Trey Amos from Ole Miss, who played on 3 different teams in college, including Louisiana and Alabama. And I think the reason why corner is so big is who do you have opposite of Christian Benford right now? You really don't have anyone at the current moment. Yes, you could bring back Rasul Douglas, but you have a big hole. The biggest hole in the roster right now is corner 2. And yes, Dane Jackson's back. I don't think the fan base wants to go into the season with Dane Jackson possibly being a starter. Jamarcus Ingram, same situation. So I think this is a situation where the drop-off at corner and the risk of going in with a lower corner into the season isn't worth it, while at D tackle, you're looking at a guy that's going to be part of a rotation. You can probably get by with someone in the later second round that can develop and still make a decent impact right away. Could safety be in play late in the first round if you get a guy like Malachi Starks? Maybe. But safety is also positioned right now where you did invest last year in the second round with Cole Bishop or whatever round. I'm mixing things up right now. So I think corner is my number one positional target at this moment.
Yeah, I think can't blame you for that at all. And do you think there's an opportunity? Are there any of the guys, we're talking about Barron, Will Johnson, any of those guys you think that they would be willing to move up for in the first round to go get? Like, I'm wondering, like, we never hear stuff. We never hear what plans they're going into draft really with this Bills organization ever. It does feel like they are pretty well positioned that if they just love somebody in that top, because I don't know. I haven't heard Bean refer to the draft like as much as he did last year. Last year he was saying with the draft it was like 26 guys basically. And so how are we going to get one of those guys? And if we don't, what do we do? Like he was like, this is a really top tier, and then everything else. I haven't heard how he describes this class specifically, But if he thinks there's, an the way that he, at least we know that he kind of chunks this out. If he thinks the upper tier of this draft is like 17 guys or whatever, is Bean willing to go up to number, say 14 with the Colts or something like that and make a big move to go get Jahdae Barron and put him across from Benford and say, this is our guy? I don't know. I think it could be a year where that's why everything's a little quiet, because they're plotting, or at least not plotting, but at least positioning themselves to keep all those options available to them, because what they really need is impact players and starters, whatever, if it's on the D line, at the D tackle position, or at the cornerback. And if they're just in love with a guy and think they need to go get him, now's the time to do that. Now's the time to spend draft capital in this draft to go get a guy if you think he's going to be a starter and a potential star for your team next year.
Yeah, I think what's tough about talking about the draft this year, to me, this is similar to the year that they drafted Greg Rousseau from a fan perspective. It's really hard to get a read on what they're thinking right now. And Joey, thanks for commenting. Go Bills. It is kind of tough right now, because last year we were talking about wide receiver the entire offseason. We knew they were going to get a wide receiver the moment they traded Stephon Diggs and didn't re-sign Gabe Davis. There's been other years where you knew it was going to be a quarterback. The year they drafted Kaiir Elam. Obviously, when they drafted Josh Allen, you knew it was going to be quarterback. Right now, there's a couple different directions they could go. There's a group of guys at each position that they could target. So there doesn't seem to be a clear-cut favorite for what the Bills can do at this point in time. In years past, we would talk about trading up for a certain receiver, and a lot of times we'll see minor moves. Like when the Bills traded up for Dalton Kincaid, nobody really expected that before that draft. He came out of nowhere for the most part. When they trade up for Kaiir, people would have expected them to possibly trade up for a corner, but it wasn't necessarily Kaiir. Maybe it was McDuffie that people wanted to get at that point in time. This draft, we have all of our speculation, but it just hasn't been as highly anticipated as previous years. And I think part of that is because the Bills have a better rounded roster overall, and they don't have as many holes. So there's really less things to really say, well, that's a glaring problem on the team. And I think the other problem is when you're in a late first round selection, you don't really know who's going to drop to you. And there's a couple different varieties. And yeah, I think most people would say that defensive line was a big issue. But when you got all that depth there, I think that just makes corner become the top priority, because you know you can get somebody good at interior line later in the draft. So it's going to be an interesting first round. I do think there could be a couple surprise positions of interest. I still think wide receiver is something they might have some interest in. I'm not going to say it's a high need, but when you look at this roster, there's a lot of good talent at receiver, not a lot of great talent. Then you can just Palmer, where you're not going to reach for a receiver in this draft. You obviously invested in Keon Coleman in the beginning of the second round last year. You have Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel. So I think that takes them out of the Matthew Golden conversation. Maybe later on in the draft, they maybe go after some speed. But I really do think we're basically at the point it's going to be one of three positions. It's either going to be a D tackle, a corner, or a safety. And I think corner would be my high betting favorite right now.
All right. Well, I like the names you presented at corner as well. Hairston, I think he's been the popular pick in the mocks too. And I do love the idea of the fit across from Benford. If you have Benford, a guy who's not the fastest, kind of relies on his instincts and his athleticism and his size, and then to put Hairston across from him, a pure burner who can kind of just bring a completely different element to your secondary. He's the guy I really enjoy that idea. If that's a guy they can go get, they might have to trade up a little bit to go get him. He's been going in the mid-20s in some mocks too. So Amos is kind of more the typical. He's rangy. He's a guy that kind of is the kind of typical prototype that they would go after. So it really just depends on what they're going to look to take swings on there. I also do think in that second round, like you're saying, it's probably more likely that's where they address the D tackle. And here's the thing, they could pick at 30, pick a corner, be happy, and then that's where the trade up comes, is the early second round. And all of a sudden they get Kenneth Grant too. Maybe that's the situation. Maybe they go get the D tackle they wanted late in the first round and then just make a big trade up with their, day 2 and day 3 capital that they have to go get the other guy that they wanted along the D line. I think if you told Bills fans that today, hit the button, you get, whoever your top corner and D tackle is in the draft, the Bills will get in rounds 1 and 2. Somehow, some way, I would take that. I'd hit that button right now. If you told me the haul was Hairston and Grant at 30 and 46 or something, I think I'd be okay with that, honestly.
Yeah, I think everybody would be okay with those two guys. So there is some ways that they can kind of manipulate this. If they are looking for 2 high impact players that could be really good players right away, that's definitely a possibility. Having 3 picks in the top 2 rounds, I see that's the thing I struggle with the trading up. You have a possibility of adding a third quality player, and this is one of those tough things. The Bills are on the cusp and have been on the cusp of being a Super Bowl contender for several years now. And when you have Josh Allen, you don't want to waste it. I don't know if there's any single player in this draft right now that would elevate the Bills' chances for this season. Obviously, quarterback has the highest potential because you're probably drafting a starter. And we love these defensive linemen, but we don't know which one of these defensive linemen is going to turn out to be a great player right away. We can speculate, but how well has Brandon Beane done drafting defensive linemen throughout the years? He has some hits. Greg Rousseau was definitely one. We have Ed Oliver, who I would say really hasn't lived up to the draft spot he went. AJ Epineza, okay. Like there's a bunch of guys that are okay to good, but not really to that elite level that you're hoping for. And I think a lot of fans, they get their hopes up with some of these guys, Grant included, and realize we're talking about a rookie. You're not guaranteed Aaron Donald or somebody that's going to be great. It could be a guy that takes a year or two to be at a decent level. So I guess my enthusiasm is kind of I really don't have high enthusiasm for this draft. I think the Bills will end up with quality players, but I don't know if you told me, is there anybody that's going to get them over the edge for changing my expectations for next year? No, I'm going to have to see it before I believe it. I think the Bills are already right there, and I don't think
exactly.
I don't know if I can tell you any of these players is really going to be the guy that makes the difference next year. It's possible, but you just never know. They're not getting a top 15 pick.
What you're describing, Michael Bunt, is a lottery ticket. That's what all these guys are this year. Like maybe you draft Hairston and all of a sudden he's a superstar cornerback. Maybe he's not. Like that's what you're hoping for in turn. Like you're perfectly right. This team is already a Super Bowl contender. They don't like they're going to walk into next year as a top 4 favorite in the NFL to win the Super Bowl. So we're hoping even if it is incremental additions to the team, that could be what puts them over the edge. But we're only hoping for great impact from one of these guys. You can't walk into the year expecting that. I don't think Brandon Beane's expecting that. I also kind of agree. I'm talking about the scenario of trading up, but I'm kind of just playing devil's advocate because I'm also partial to the idea of them trading out of that first round pick at 30 and collecting some extra assets going into the second round. You get it early. Then if you go into day 2 and say you have another second and another third or something like that, now you can really move around and get the guys that you want from those day 2 picks if you do want to do that. Or like you're saying, it's just another couple lottery tickets at guys who could be contributors this year. If there's not, somebody that you're completely in love with at 30 and there's a team that wants to come up and spend to get back into the first round, I could see that being a possibility this year with Beane.
Yeah. So obviously we want to keep this show pretty short today. We'll go for maybe 5-10 more minutes max, and then we'll wrap this up. We've talked a bit about the first round guys overall. I think you and me are both in agreement. It's going to be defense unless somehow they decide to go Matthew Golden if he drops or some crazy scenario. The Bills aren't going quarterback. running back. If they go running back, it's
They
going to be
trade up. They trade up
middle
to
of the draft.
6 for.
Yeah.
They
If
trade
they
up to
go
6
running
for
back
Ashton
early,
Johnson.
yeah, if they go running back early, that means James Cook is out of Buffalo, which I don't see that. It's tight end. That could be a later round pick. A wide receiver, I guess, 100% close it out in the first 4 rounds, but don't think it's likely. Interior line for the offensive line, guard, center.
Yeah.
Maybe those are depth picks for the Bills. Obviously, you got some contracts that they're going to have to take care of in future years. So this is looking like at least a defensive heavy draft early on, which is ironic considering the Bills have extended several defensive players this offseason in Rousseau and Benford and Bernard. So you extend 3 players, but yet you're still saying you need a lot more to your defense. And I think that's one of the reasons why this has been a little bit less of a talked about draft overall by Bills fans, because we are talking about defensive tackles. We're not talking about guys in the top 10 that you know are going to be stars. We're not talking about edge rushers that are going to get 10 sacks. We're not talking about high-flying linebackers that can be difference makers. We're talking about defensive tackle. We're talking about safety. And then at corner, good players, but we're really not talking about the elite of the elite, like a Sauce Gardner when he comes into the draft. So I'll ask, because I'm going to keep this quick today. Has this been one of the more boring build-ups to a draft that you've had as a Bills fan in recent memory? Because to me, I know the people that truly love football, the Cover One guys, maybe the Bills and Buffalo guys, some of these other ones, they'll say, "Oh, we love it. We love breaking down all these defensive tackles." It's a little bit boring to me. It's a little bit boring. Maybe if I knew the Bills were going to get like a star, I could talk a little bit up to it. But this is where the true football guys salivate. And I'm not saying I'm not a true football guy, but I feel like
I know. Give yourself some credit. Come on, Mike.
We're not in a position where one player I think is going to make the difference, and if they get there or not next year. Obviously, one play can make the difference, but we're not going to know that going into this draft. Yep. We'll have to see the season play out. So has it been a little bit of a dull last month or so building into the draft?
Well, so Mike, you're talking about there's a couple different points I want to jump off of there, because we're talking some inside baseball thing here. The Pay the Bills podcast, at least from Jake Mike on the Pay the Bills podcast. I appreciate the Cover One guys. I love them. I love their passion for it, because I learn a lot from them and their breakdowns and everything. I'm not going to be breaking down the film of the D tackles and loving the process of that. Like, so I'm gonna be going off other people's stuff. Like my draft, I'm with you. My draft class range is gonna change from narrative for year to year, right? Like it is. And I watch a lot of highlights. I watch a lot of breakdowns if I'm really into a draft year. And I also just watch a lot of college football. So I rely on a lot of the eye tests of some of these guys that I just have watched for, the better part of the last 3 years with a lot of my thing. That being said, for me as a Bills fan and just an NFL draft fan, I'm not feeling the hype this year. Maybe it's because the quarterbacks. Maybe it's because it's just not. I mean, there's a lot of solid players, but like we've already been exposed to like the superstar players here. And when I say that, I mean Travis Hunter specifically. Like I feel like in other years we would have been thrilled about Travis Hunter, but we've been talking about Travis Hunter like endlessly for like 5 years. I feel like that's a lot of it. Same with Shedeur. Like 2 guys at the top of this draft that I feel like people are just kind of already tired hearing about. No fault to these guys at all, but we already know enough. Everything's been said.
A little bit of fault to them. Let's be real.
Well, Shedeur a little bit for sure. Shedeur a little bit of fault as much to him. Travis a little bit not as.
They chose. Okay.
They did. You're right.
Chose to go to Colorado and be with Deion.
Shedeur didn't choose that.
So, I don't think you can say that's no fault to.
That's fair. That's fair. But so I think it's just the whole tenor around the draft in general. But Mike, I think for me as a Bills fan, just looking at it from that perspective, the reason I'm not as interested in the draft this year is because we were just in the freaking AFC Championship game, 1 drive away from winning, and I'd rather just see Week 1. Like, and one of these guys, I know for me, as I've said, we've talked it on podcasts leading, when free agency started and everything else. Like, I felt pretty good that they were going to fill the holes on this roster and then probably improve on the margins in places that they needed to in the draft. Maybe they don't take a big swing, but just adding talent to this team where last year we were talking about them being talent deficient, quote unquote, going into the season. If we're just adding better players to a team that was this good last year, I feel like they could win the Super Bowl. And so I still feel that way. Maybe it's never the big splash move that we were wanted or expected, but the improvements on the margins, if they're enough, it could be the difference between them beating Kansas City and then beating a good team from the NFC and winning a Super Bowl. Like, that's where we're at with this team. So I think I'm just impatient for week one, Mike. I think that's more what it is.
Yeah, I'm with you too, and a good point by Josh with Travis Hunter. Him losing his two-way player status kind of drags down. It really does, and I've thought about that. Like, he'll probably eventually play both positions, maybe in the NFL if he's great and gets that point where he gets that power to kind of be like, well, I'll only play for you if you let me play both positions. But like, what if he goes out as a corner and he stinks? Does he then switch to receiver? And then, like, vice versa. What if he goes at receiver and he struggles? Not that I anticipate him to struggle, but like, the whole hype is that he's a great athlete. He's an unbelievable, and he can go both ways. But what if they don't allow him to go both ways, and then he struggles? Then the whole hype like goes away. So I am interested about see how Travis Hunter works, because he obviously Deion being one of the last players to actually be able to do that, and him being the coach. So Deion believes in him, which is a ringing endorsement. But we got to see it at the NFL level first, and that's a totally different game, especially when you're playing at Colorado and you have a coach that's trying to hype you out, build his program, get other recruits to get interest. Like, that's a way to sell a program. Let a star player play both ways. So we'll see how this all goes down. And the last point I really will say is, when you're as close as what the Bills are, you're really not a move away. You're really already there. It's just more so, are you going to execute when it matters? I feel like the draft is more intriguing when your team is bad or your team is mid, and you are a couple players away from possibly being middle of the pack or good. Like the Sabres, the draft is, and I know NHL takes a little bit longer for prospects to get there, but like for the Sabres, the offseason can be intriguing because you're like, well, if they get a top 6 forward and a top 4 defenseman, maybe they can make the playoffs. Or if you're a team in the middle of the pack that's going like 9-8 or 8-9, you're like, well, if we can get that wide receiver or that defensive end, we can get over the top. The Bills, they're not in that position. And last year we had the buzz because we were looking for a receiver. There's been other years where we're looking at other things. Looking at D-tackle, you're not going to really know much. But, Jake, this was a fun almost half an hour of Bills talk. I know you have to get going, so we're going to keep this short, wrap this up. The next 2 weeks, we have a lot coming on the Pay the Bills podcast. Next week, we're going to get into a more in-depth positional breakdown. We'll talk about the corners we like, the defensive tackles we like, the safeties. We'll even look at the wide receivers just for the heck of it, and maybe late-round running backs and offensive linemen that the Bills might be able to target. Then after that, we're going to go do a mock draft. We'll have some fun with that. So hopefully we'll have some of the other guys back, Carson, Mike. And then next thing you know, it's going to be the draft 2 weeks from now. Jake and I are going to be surrounded by a lot of the guys on the team. We're going to have a lot of coverage. So any final thoughts, Jake, before we wrap it up tonight?
Very well said, Mike. Yeah, we're right in the thick of it here. I'm interested. What you just said, it's more intriguing when your team's bad. That's true. But the intrigue here for me is what is Brandon Beane? How does he attack it? If you're just interested in seeing like how he feels about this team and how they're gonna take their swings in this draft, I guess that's the most interesting thing. But we'll be here to break it all down. I can't wait for the next couple of weeks. Thank you all for tuning into this chaotic episode of Pay the Bills podcast. Listen, the mobile set. Sometimes we're what's the quote I'm looking for? We're limited to the technology of our time here. And
it's not going to always be like this, but we still wanted to put a show out. We'll try to have the quality go up a little bit as we go out towards the draft, but sometimes technical difficulties, camera issues, they get in the way. But one last thing to nearly 800 people that tuned in today, the Sabres are never losing again. They're up 2-0 on the road in Columbus, and the road to 500 continues if they can pull this out. They'll be 500 in the standings Don't talk to me about overtime losses. I don't care about your arguments about those being losses. So on that note, 14 days away. It gets real. It gets exciting. Can't wait. He's Jake. I'm Mike. We pay the bills. Can't wait for NFL draft coverage to continue in the next couple of weeks.